Good morning to you. Willkommen, mein Freund. At least I assume it's good morning. Good morning to those of you who are in Australia and or New Zealand. Or maybe Japan. I don't know if anyone's listening to me from Japan, but if you are, good morning. If you're not, if you're listening to this from somewhere else in the world, then good, whatever it is to you. This is the SitRep for today, the 27th of November, 2022. I'm Gads, it's Ragnarok Survival. And the situation report is where we go through stuff and things, mainly news stories that I've found interesting over the past 24 hours and pull it apart from the perspective of prepping. And if you've been listening the last 2 days, you'll know that we're in the midst of a series. It's a character arc, if you will, which I think it's the first time I've ever done something like that. But anyway, we're up to part 3 now of the Kyiv saga. So we've got a human being in Kyiv who is currently blasting their life, their woes and their troubles out onto Twitter, and we're following it, or at least I'm following it, because I find it interesting to see somebody who is not a prepper, clearly, actually going through this stuff in real time. And we're kind of getting a little bit of stream of consciousness from this person as they're going through the process of going, hey, the lights are out, I can't do anything, shit, what's actually important to my life right now? On top of that, this person is very much an academic. This person is a well-to-do person. They've got means, they've got money, but they do live in an apartment. So it's interesting to see this whole saga unfold. So we've got part 3 today. Good morning to you. Hey, bub. Where's my cigar? Damn it. I don't have a cigar on me. Savage the Wild. Good to see you as always. Love your stuff. Love what you're putting out there as usual. Chris Fleming, good morning from Brisbane. I don't know why they call it Vegas. It's not really Vegas at all. It's much more Brisbane than it is Vegas. But anyway, good morning to you. And good morning. Thank you very much for joining me, everyone who is joining me on Instagram, on YouTube's, or might even be listening to this after the fact on the audio version on a podcast, which, whilst looking at some of the statistics yesterday, the very, very irresolute statistics just says how many people are downloading it where from. It was Stitcher, now it's Spotify. Most people are listening to this on Spotify, so that's interesting. I don't think I've gone past the barrier yet of being allowed onto whatever the Google version is, or Alexa or shit like that. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but apparently I'm on Spotify, I'm on Stitcher, so you can download them there if you want. Peter Rouse said, didn't Ukraine call for all non-essential workers, military-aged males to join the military? Yes, they did. The caveat being, as it usually is within these sorts of, I don't want to say conscription, but these sort of situations where they pull in fighting-age males, is that a lot of the time university folk are left alone. They don't pull in university folk because you're studying, right? It's important stuff. Academia, blah, blah, blah. This person is an academic, but they are a professor. They teach it. They're also an advisor to the government to do with economics, I think, financial sort of stuff. I think that's who it is. I did start following this morning, but and I got a little blast from my source who's sending me all this stuff in a thread, a Twitter thread. They informed me that's what a collection of tweets is called a thread. So every day is a school day, right? So anyway, he's sending me this thread of this person and said, just for some context, here's who this person is. This is not a average Joe, okay? This is somebody who's actually quite high up. This is somebody who does have meetings with people in the government, does do fundraisers. And in fact, there's a whole spiel in this thread that I'm probably just going to skip over, where he's doing fundraising for, raising different charities and, kind of loosely the war effort in Ukraine. So no, this person didn't get called in, and I don't think they're fighting age males. I don't think this person's over 65. I'm pretty sure they're not. But they're not fighting ages in. They're probably over 40, 45, which pains me to say that, because I like to think that I'm still a fighting age male. I'm not. The truth is I'm not, but Yeah, 18 to 25-year-olds are generally thought of as your fighting age males. Anyway, you didn't jump on here this morning to hear me ramble about this sort of shit. You jumped on to probably hear more of the ongoing saga. Day 3 of the blackout now. Day 3, day 4. I think we get into day 4 somewhere in this thread here. So again, I'm just going to read this out, like little parts of this out, and then comment on it because I still find this really fascinating. I find it really, really valuable information here because it is somebody who hasn't thought about a lot of this stuff before. So we can learn lessons from this. There's some really valuable lessons we can pull out here. Good evening. Day 3 of the blackout. My home is cold. Remember I was talking about yesterday. Day 1, he was not worried about heating his home at all. He was like, we'll be fine. It's an apartment. We're going to be great. Day 2, he saw the error of his ways. And day 3, we're actually getting domestics come out of this. So this is pretty interesting. But the home is cold, no electricity, no heating. It is becoming a real issue. So this is what I did at KSE, which is the Kyiv something of economics, School of Economics. That's right, because he's an economics professor where he works. At KSE, there was a small gasoline generator, enough to power up an electric heater and several small appliances. I did not want to ask for it. KSE might need it more, but I got desperate after being unable to find anything online or at shops. Remember, I was talking about this yesterday. When some sort of crisis happens, it's too late to go out and buy stuff a lot of the time. The run has already happened and you're not going to be able to get access to these sorts of things. So that's what he's finding out now. He's like, I've left it too late. I can't get a generator. There's nothing on the market, even in the surrounding countries. Like he was looking at Poland, nothing there. So he's getting desperate. I made sure it is not being used tonight and asked to borrow it. It took quite a bit of effort to carry it up to the 8th floor. So 2 things I just want to stop and point out here. First off, this is exactly what I'm trying to illustrate when I say the phrase be an asset, not a liability. It's the reason why I don't just have a generator. I have multiple generators in my home because I know in a sustained blackout, in a sustained emergency, yeah, it's fine that I can power my phone and keep, blasting out Instagram feeds and stuff like that. But there's going to be other people than me who are actually involved in this. And I want to try and help my community. I want to try and help people as much as I can without compromising my own safety and my own needs. So that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that I'm trying to be an asset. So I'm looking at it and going, oh, well, providing power for myself is not enough. I need to provide power for my family, my friends, my mutual assistance group, and if I can, my community, if it works out to do it. So that's why I've got more generators. I've got more solar battery setups. I've got more setups so that I'm never sort of stuck without anything. And it just builds in redundancy for me as well. But here he is taking something off another organization. It's a university, so I don't really give a shit. But, maybe they were doing something important. Maybe they're doing it like students have to stay in the university or something, so they need to heat themselves. He did check, so he's not taking it off anyone, sorry. He's not taking it off anyone. He did check about that, but still, you don't want to be that person on their knees with the soup bowl in hand going, please, sir, can I have some more, of people in an emergency. You want to be the person who's doling out soup, or at least just holding your own, not asking for soup, not taking off other people. So that's a big thing. I'm not criticizing this guy. Like I said, he's clearly not preparedness minded. He's just your average kind of normal Joe. Well, he's not a normal Joe. He's a professor, but what I would say your average kind of Australian mindset is actually like. They're not preparing for the end of the world. They're not preparing for even a sustained blackout. So he's caught up in that sort of issue. The second thing is here, what he said here. It took quite a bit of effort to carry it up to the 8th floor. You've probably heard this from me at some stage, how much I harp on about 2 things that I think are the absolute most important thing a prepper can sort out. Your first one is your mindset, your psychology. Make sure that this is right and ready to go. Set yourself in a place where you are a prepared individual. That's what this is all about. It's about building the confidence within a human being that they are in some way, shape, or form self-reliant, that you are in some way, shape, or form self-reliant. That's what we're trying to do, that you got this. We are human beings. We have been around in this form in this particular form for at least hundreds of thousands of years, right? So, and we've survived heaps worse things than what's being thrown at us right now. We can do this, and it's just about teaching ourselves again, reminding ourselves that we can do it. So mindset's the number one thing. The second thing is your physical being, your body. You need to get it into whatever shape you can, to whatever peak you can. For some people, that won't be very high. I understand that. For some people, it will be very high. And I would suggest that if you are listening to this and you live in a Western country, a developed country, then you should be up at that peak. You have access to more nutrition, to more physical knowledge, to more time in which to work out than almost any human that we know of in recorded history. We eat better. Your average person right now in Australia eats better than kings did 400 or 500 years ago. So just think about that. You've got everything that you need. So you should have this thing worked out. Not being able to carry a generator up 8 flights of stairs, or it being a massive struggle, because he does harp on about this a bit. And there's an actual video of them like on the landing, and they're both like gassed out, can't go on, and they take a breather and then continue on. It's an effort for them to do it. They do it though. They get it done. Spoiler alert. But that's what I'm talking about. Is I quite often when I'm training, it's a bit of a joke. I say I'm training for Ragnarok. I'm training for the apocalypse, right? Well, it's this kind of stuff. I'm training for shitty times, right? I'm training for what happens if I don't have this. What happens if my car breaks down and I do have to walk 20 k's with a pack on my back? What happens if I have to sprint away from a dog running out of someone's yard, charging at me, or I have to scoop up a kid and run off? Like, do I have the ability to do that? Do I have the ability to fend someone off? My dogs are just barking at something. Savage the Wild says, my mind says I can fight, my knees say otherwise. I'm totally in the same boat as you, bro. I was talking about this playing basketball recently. Like, my mind says, like, yeah, you can still dunk it. And then I take off and I've got like a negative vertical leap. So as soon as I leap, I'm going down already. But this is something that also I'm like, okay, well, I'm 40 years old. My knees are pretty shot, but I can do something about this. I'm really starting to focus on this with my workout regime, with how I'm structuring my workouts, with what I'm doing with my nutrition. Everything is start to build around this, because last time I went and hunted goats, it's goat country that I'm hunting in. So it's up and down and it's ravines and it's, can be slippery and dangerous, but it's, you go down there, you shoot a goat, and then you got to pack that thing out on foot. I was hurting. And it was probably about 5 k's in total, like down there, shoot, come back. I was buggered, and I'm like, I don't want to be buggered. I want to be able to do this when I'm 60, when I'm 70, even when I'm 80. I want to be able to go out and hunt. So that's my goal. That's my focus. That's my mindset. So that's where I've got to get to physically as much as I can. Plan B is e-bikes. Peter Rouse says people need to build out a home gym as part of their preps. Again, totally agree, 100%. I like really old school sort of working out. That's just what tickles my fancy. I also like the more battle orientated type stuff. Having that military background, that's what I'm used to doing. So that's where I've gone with it. So you can build out. I did build out a home gym for like next to nothing. I mean, I remember when we were in East Timor, when we were in Afghanistan, we were building gyms out of just chunks of concrete, out of tires, out of cinder blocks, anything we could get our hands on. We were building gyms out of. But we do have access to really cool gear right now. And again, like I said yesterday, Black Friday, consumer bullshit, holiday, whatever. I find the whole thing pretty appalling. However, there are some online deals going on at the moment that I cannot resist. And so I am using this opportunity to bolster my home gym a little bit. There's a few key things where I'm like, this would be really cool if I could have that. And especially thinking about the knee stuff. So it's like more rehab type gear and things like that. And I'm like, well, now's my opportunity. It's cheap now. I'm jumping on it. So definitely think about that, building up the gym. But I always tell people, if you can't afford stuff, you have gravity, you have your body weight, you have every gym that you need, because human beings, this body Yeah, it can be built by lifting weights, but this body was given to me through thousands of generations of humans who did not lift weights. They just lived. They just did stuff, and they got physiques, that was something like this. So we have everything we need, and we just need to actually apply ourselves. Renee C says, "I'm so unfit, lols. I'm doing the goat moves when danger happens." That's the freezing and falling over, I'm guessing. Peter Rouse says, "I have a home shooting range that's set up to do conditioning and shooting at the same time," which is a great idea. Like static shooting is good for improving like some basic techniques, but what we used to call in the military training the battlefield shot, it is a totally different thing. It is an utterly different thing. And I still find it when I'm hunting too. I'll get what we call buck fever or whitetail fever, some people call it. Like you get the adrenaline dump when you've actually got something in your sights and you're like, and you're shaking around. Or I've just walked around somewhere, or I've had to scoot around somewhere very fast in order to get a better shot. So I'm quite gassed, and so it's not a relaxed day, and everything's perfect, and the weather's fine, and I'm sitting there just going through my breathing cycle and breathing out and relaxing and squeezing off that shot. Everything's jittery, everything's wrong, everything's rainy, and I'm hurting and I'm sweaty and it's getting in my eyes. And so that's a really good idea there from Peter Rouse. I like that. And Savage as well says those sorts of drills are awesome, Peter. I love it. Even if you can just emulate this, like what have I done in the past? Like kettlebell swings, pick up the gun, pick up the rifle. 3 shots, seeing what group you get. Kettlebell swings, sprint around an area, come back, shoot again. Even moving forward and backward, I found is a really good one. Getting up, moving like quickly, I run, down, take a shot, up, move forward, down, because you're having then to adjust your point of aim as well when you're actually shooting. Look at me talking about shooting. I've been so real gun shy and knife shy on YouTube and Instagram. I was deathly afraid of getting banned. Now I'm like, whatevs. People guts to know this stuff. All right, so back to the story here. He just carried the generator with the friend, the CEO Mike, his mate from work. Carried it up to the 8th store, almost 8th level, 8th floor. Almost missed curfew doing this. It is very loud. So these are the things people don't think about generators. I was talking to someone a little while ago, and I said, "Oh, make sure you got this and this and this." And I see this a lot from people who prep. They do the brush off. They're like, yeah, I've got that sorted. I don't care. What do I do about this? And I always find that a real odd attitude. I try as much as possible to never brush people off or brush anything off when it comes to preps. I never want to live with the assumption that I'm ready. I want to live with the assumption that like I'm at a good level and that I can handle a lot of things, but there's 100% there's things I've not thought of. So yeah, I remember talking to this person and I was saying like, well, yeah, electricity is a big thing. They're like, oh, look, I live in an apartment. I've got a petrol generator and 2 Jerrys, so I'm fine with that. I don't have to worry about electricity. And I go, oh, okay, like where are you going to set up your generator? Oh, on the balcony, I guess. I think it'll probably fit. It's a small balcony, but it'll probably fit. I'm like, you haven't tried that? I'm like, no. I'm like, have you turned the generator on? No, it's a Honda though, so it's pretty quiet. I'm like, yeah, it's quiet compared to other generators. Honda is definitely one of the more quiet generators compared to other generators, but it's not quiet. It's not like silent. It still makes a shitload of noise. That's what this old mate here's found out. It is very loud. We put it outside on our balcony, which you're going to have to do. This is another thing that people don't think about sometimes is generators produce electricity, they produce a lot of sound, they produce a lot of exhaust and fumes. So you can't have it going inside. You have to have it going outside. And then you have to think about what that noise is also doing. Is it going to affect you, which does affect this person, affects their sleep? Is it going to affect other people as well? What's that going to make them feel like? Is it going to attract attention as well? If I'm sitting here in a blackout and I'm like, oh man, day 2 of the blackout, and then I start hearing that, I'm like, someone's got a generator. I might go ask them if I can use some of their electricity. So it attracts attention to you, might be unwanted attention. There was a battle to get lines into the apartment through windows while not creating a large draft. As we said yesterday, it's very cold outside, and we said at the start of this one, his apartment's already cold, so he doesn't want to make it any colder. But we now have light electric heating in one room and can power up multiple devices in turns. Talks about how the heater looks, and then the temperature is already about 19 degrees centigrade, Celsius. Sorry. For those who don't know, so my North American friends mainly, 19 degrees is close to room temperature, I guess. A lot of people say 21 is room temperature. I think that's kind of grossly hot, personally. I think I'm a bit more cold adapted, though. But 19 degrees, regardless of that, it's a relatively comfortable temperature. 19 degrees. So for those who don't know, I don't know what it would be in Fahrenheit. I'm guessing like 50, maybe 50, 60. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm way out. But it's, essentially room temperature that he's got it at. Plus, we have enough water stored. We took care of that yesterday, and food. So he's got the food and the water stored, which is great. Great sort of stuff. These are the two most important things. Heating or shelter being the most important. If you freeze to death, doesn't matter how much water or food you've got. But food and water also really good. Talks about exhaust here. Exhaust won't get into the apartment. I won't go to bed for a while to check for it, though, he says, which is a really good idea here. These are the sorts of things that you really want to think about. And I quite often do this when I'm testing preps and I'm testing out new stuff. If it's going overnight, I'll check it. And I'll even probably get up during the night to check these sorts of things to make sure nothing's too awry, i.e., exhaust fumes getting into your apartment. That's not a good thing to happen. So he's checking on that, which is good. But we could not get our generator project until we made sure at work that all our colleagues got Ubers and taxis home. He goes on to talk about Ubers and taxis. So he's just saying that he took the generator from work, from the university, to his home with his mate Mike. Then he has this photo of all the workers there, so all the other professors and stuff sitting there waiting for Ubers. Apparently, that's been one of the hard things, is actually getting around the city and using things like Ubers, because that relies on internet. And so the internet being intermittent meant that it's very hard for people to actually get onto these sorts of services, and they're getting stuck at these places. Plus, it was late at night. They had a fundraiser or something. So he goes on to talk about this fundraiser. Rebuilding a medical clinic that got destroyed apparently by Russians during the Battle of Kyiv. Then talks about how much money they're raising, blah, blah, blah. Goes on to talk about like some of the generator systems that they've got going on at the universities. They've got those larger ones, which are generally diesel. You can get larger ones that are petrol as well, but a lot of those larger ones that are used for construction sites, movie sets, stuff like that, that you can hire, a lot of those ones are actually diesel, and there's a reason for that. Diesel is, I think, superior to petrol when it comes to generators. Any sort of engine, really. I always tend towards diesel. That's my preference. I think they're more robust, they're harder, they can run longer, more consistently, with less likely that there'll be issues or breakdowns or anything like that. That's pros. The cons of diesel, sometimes you can get quite a lot of gunk and things like that go through them. That's the technical term, gunk, right? So you do need a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of knowledge, but I've found that a little bit of knowledge fixes a lot of problems when it comes to diesel issues. A little bit of knowledge gets you nowhere with petrol. a lot of knowledge might get you somewhere with petrol, but that's my experience, at least, diesel versus petrol. If anyone's thinking about it, I'm always advocating that you search for diesel. And I know at least Peter Rouse is an advocate as well of diesel engines. I'm going to guess you're going to pop up very soon with a message if you're listening to me still. Blah, 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 talking about the event here, talking about going shopping with his students, using some of the proceeds. Not really, it's just him. The only interesting thing that I found out of that sort of stuff is that, again, the maintenance of life. Like, there's a fundraising event going on. There's PowerPoints and people around round tables drinking wine and such what. Meanwhile, there are people who, can't get water. So the disparity that's actually going on, and it's that sort of idea that I think people find it hard to really grok when you're talking about disaster scenarios, is it's either all out end of the world, or, well, no, things are fine. You've got some things that are fine, you got some things that are shit. That's the way it works. And that's one of the things that I think has been beautifully illustrated over the past 3 days of this guy's thread. Day 4. All right, so we're into day 4 now. This is interesting. Tonally interesting. The change in tone. Day 4 of the blackout. Day 276 of the war. We're in Kyiv. Warm. Our generator on the balcony project yesterday did not really work out. The generator was loud and working, but the heater in our room would not bring temperature up beyond a couple of degrees. Interesting stuff. And Peter Rouse also says that diesel stores better. So when you're storing diesel, that's why, my vehicle's a diesel. My storage is in diesel, and it stores a lot better than petrol. Probably like on a ratio of about 1 to 4, I would say. I wouldn't really want to store petrol beyond 3 months. Diesel, I'm happy to store at 12 months. That's untreated. You can treat them as well and extend that life out. Back to the story here. So he's talking about that the heater was only bringing up the room a couple of degrees. Generator's working. Generator, and I looked at the photos and the videos of the generator. It's a medium-sized generator. Should be able to power a heater quite well. My wife and I got into an argument in the middle of the night about why it doesn't work. Natalia said the heater is broken. I argued that the apartment is cold and the heater needs more time. We tried to sleep. The generator was too loud, so we shut it down. And of course, we woke up cold. But there was electricity. I could see a little red dot on our bedroom TV. We rerouted the heater back into the building electricity network, and great news, it works. So they've got their TV plugged in still. And they woke up in the morning to mains power. They woke up in the morning, the little red light was on. So they're like, sweet. Grid power's back up. So they've plugged all their stuff back into the grid power out, like off the generator, and put the heater on. Where are we? Electric network. And great news, it works. So he's plugged the heater back into grid power and it works. So there's something going on there between the heater and the generator that is causing the heater to not work 100%. There's a number of reasons why that might be happening. It could be like when you're starting to get into generators, you're going to have to start to look into what the difference between AC and DC is. You're going to have to think about how the conversion between 12 volt and whatever voltage you've got in your part of the world in Australia, 240, how that's going to work. And if it has the inverter within it, which most of them do nowadays, but if it doesn't, how you're going to actually convert that power. But it might also be from a different part of the world. So if I was to buy a generator from the US, it would come to me, and I think it's 110 volt that you use over in the US, because you're a bit afraid of the voltage. But in Australia, we like to ride the lightning. And so we went 240. We're like, fuck, do it all the way, 240. Let it rip. No, that's not how it works. It sounds pretty funny whenever I think about it. Yeah, so if I plugged an appliance in here in Australia to a 110 volt generator, at best it's not going to work. At best, it's not going to work. At worst, it might do something bad to that piece of machinery. And if we swap that over, which I have done in the past, I've used a US piece of electronic equipment and plugged it into 240 volt and blew it to hell. So you do need to think about that. There's something going on here about the generator and the heater. The other thing to think about is that heaters take up a lot more energy than people think about, especially what type of heater. He doesn't go into what type of heater it is, but quite possibly those heaters draw a whole lot more electricity than people give them credit for. Can you shoot me a link to this story on my Instagram whenever you get a chance? I will. Yep. Savage the Wild. I'll do it once I jump off here. So heater's working and it's fast. The bedroom is now quite comfortable. So very quickly got it back up to a nice temperature. So the problem is probably that the generator does not give enough power. I'm going to figure that this out today a bit later. The electricity might not last, however. We rushed to set up the washing machine. I also worked on the building heating radiators. They felt warm, so something was working. I'm not 100% sure, but I was having a conversation, or a quick little sort of to and fro message conversation with my main source on Instagram about this, which is really, really fascinating. That a lot of people in Australia have absolutely no viz on at all. If you want to heat a house in Australia, it is up to you, the individual within the house, to heat it. And I imagine it's probably pretty similar in the US, in most parts of the US. In Europe, though, in large parts of Europe, especially Eastern Europe, they actually have heating generation facilities, thermal plants, and they pump the heat out to the local area, like very akin to electricity. In fact, quite often they're the same thing. Electricity, thermal, they pump both of those out to the local area. So there's heat being generated at a plant and it gets pumped out into homes, into apartment blocks, and runs around whatever system of pipes they have there. And people can turn those on or off and get the heat from them. I think this is what he's talking about here when he's talking about the building heating radiators. I'm not 100% sure of that, though. He had to figure out how to let air out of some of them. He goes on to talk about some of the things where you can see he has like very little idea of how they work, and he's trying to figure it out, which is super interesting. If I had a system of heating in my house, I would feel very disturbed if I just sat there and went like, well, I don't know. I turn that dial and heat comes out. I would want to know how that thing works personally. Again, just a little prepping tip there. Know how your shit works so that in a pinch, you can at least attempt to fix it and you're not trying to have to do it on the fly like old mate is here. Peter Rouse says, I have US inverter sockets at home so I can use US electronics. Yeah, I've got the same now. This was many years ago. I had a business where I used to make protein bars, make and sell protein bars. And so I bought some equipment from the US and just plugged it in and just like, oh, yeah, of course, 240, 110. Yeah, does not fit. But I've got one now. So good idea. If you're buying stuff from the US, definitely a great idea. So yeah, he's talking about this heating system. For now, it works. I hope it can get through the winter. I bought another electric heater before the winter just in case. It is time to assemble it. This is my project for today. This and the generator, and some teaching at KSE, some meetings, and then shopping. He finishes off by saying, I feel today's going to be a good day. So he's in a pretty good, happy mood here. But you can see there that he's like, okay, some of my time here is going to be keeping the house warm, getting stuff prepped, but I've still got work. I've still got meetings to go to. I've still got classes to teach. I've still got shopping to do. So you can see him sort of divvying up his day here, which is quite interesting. He got called up. This guy's become quite popular apparently on the interwebs. So Times Radio in the UK called him and said, how has he been living? How's things been going on? And he's just sort of given a little bit of a rundown of what we've been talking about for the last couple of days. Interesting part here that he says, though, that they asked, can work be done? Now, this I found interesting because I don't like when I'm doing courses for journalists, okay, I'm not teaching them how to survive a emergency situation. I'm teaching them how to live and work in an emergency situation, because that can be done. In fact, that is like almost always done in an emergency situation. People still continue on. They still do stuff. They don't just throw their hands up in the air and go, "Oh, that's it. Abandon this place. We're out." Uh, people continue working. There's stuff going on. You can live and work and operate in an emergency zone. And he reiterates this to Times in the UK, Times Radio in the UK. He says, "Otherwise, what's the point? Like, what's the point in me even being here? Why would I just, why would I remain here if I'm not trying to work, if I'm not trying to continue on the functioning of society?" And he says it like this. "I said it is like living in two worlds or two universes. 1 hour, you're presenting a strategy for crime economic development after the war to a room full of diplomats in a fancy government building or villa next to the Ukrainian parliament. Electricity is there. It is warm. There is coffee and snacks. Next hour, you're trying to get home from your underground garage and you have to hold the wall and step very slowly because there is absolutely no light. I guess that was the closest experience to losing sight. Very humbling." Super interesting stuff listening to this guy, as always, for the last 3 days. And if he continues putting out this sort of stuff, I'm just going to continue talking about it. So if you're not digging this, let me know. If you want me to switch back to what's going on in the world, and I will at some stage start putting in more stories about what's happening in the world. But I'm finding this way too good of an opportunity for what the goals are of me even starting this channel. I started this channel to help encourage and maybe even inform people on how to be more prepared in your life. So watching somebody who is essentially an NPC gain prepper consciousness, that just came off the top of my head, gain prepper consciousness, like open their eyes to like, oh shit, like being prepared, and working through stuff and typing it out and giving us that information as they're doing it. This is like prepper gold. We've struck a stream of gold here of anecdotal evidence, and I just want to mine it until it's done. So yeah, let me know. Chuck it in the comments if you're not digging this sort of stuff. If you want me to switch back to our regular viewing, let me know that. If you are digging it, let me know as well. Yeah, it'd be really cool. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep following this until he starts to get boring. It seems to also be showing the divide of plebs versus elitism, says SpyScale 27. Yes. Well, you're seeing the separation of society. And I think, to me, my personal take on that is the separation of society is always there and always has been there. And I believe it always will be there. The only thing is that we don't always see it. There's times and periods where we're so padded out or busy or distracted by something else, we don't necessarily see it. But one of the advantages of going through crisis is that a lot of the stuff is stripped away and all of a sudden you see it. You can not see it. Kind of like when you've spent 30 days in a row fighting, striving against horrific bushfires day in, day out, and you get some suit-wearing PM who's been on holidays in Hawaii roll in and be like, "Oh, shake my hand, bro." You're like, dude, you're not connected to what's going on here. Like, pick up a hose or something, man, or just stay over there and throw money at the problem like you usually do. Don't come around here, coming around here. This is what happens, as far as I'm concerned, when we see these more extreme cases. When we're in more of an emergency situation, we start to see these things exacerbated, or maybe not exacerbated, but revealed. It's revelation. The book of Revelation. It's not doesn't mean the book of doom and gloom. It means the book of opening eyes to what's actually happening. That book is all about doom and gloom, though. So see how they go hand in hand. But yeah, Savage Wild says, as many times as I've accidentally shocked / electrocuted myself here in the States, that statement checks out. Throwing myself down under sounds like pure hell. Lol. Yep. Yeah, we don't mess around. We don't mess around down here. It's like, you want to get electrocuted? Fine. You're going to die. You want to go swimming in hot water? You're going to die. You're going to get eaten by a crocodile. You're going to swim in the ocean? You also die. Jellyfish, great white sharks. That's all right. Stay on land. You just get bitten by poisonous snakes. No, it's not the most dangerous thing in Australia. Drop bears. Drop bears and hoop snakes are clearly the most dangerous thing in Australia. All right. I am going to cut it there. There is a couple other things, but I'm not really going to dive into them. It's just him padding out what's going on and what's going on in his life. So that's it for today, gang. I really appreciate, as always, you're joining me on this lovely sunny here, at least, Sunday morning. I hope you're all well wherever you are in the world. Keep your heads up. Keep smiling. Things are still pretty great. We've still got time to prepare. And we can learn from lessons like this from old mate here. Timofey Milovanov. All right, my Ukrainian is not so good, so hopefully I got that right. Savage World, I'll shoot you that link very soon. For the rest of y'all, thanks again. Shoot me any questions if you've got them. Let me know what you're thinking about old mate's stories here, if we want to continue on with that, or we switch back to our regular news-y type stuff, which I probably will do tomorrow anyway. But apart from that, if you get the chance, get out into the garden today. Remember to keep prepping, keep your eyes open, and as always, Semper Paratus.